The mahogany door slammed shut behind me with the finality of a coffin lid. I stood there in the marble hallway of my childhood home, my father's words still ringing in my ears like a death knell. The company goes to Marcel, the trust funds, the properties, the board seats, everything. You'll receive a modest allowance, of course, but the real wealth stays with the men who can handle it. My name is Eleanor, and at 24, I'd just been written out of my own family's legacy. I pressed my back against that door, my hands shaking as I replayed the scene. Marcel had sat there in Dad's leather chair like he already owned it, nodding along as our father laid out his grand plan. Mom perched on the edge of the settee, her manicured fingers twisted in her lap, saying nothing, as usual. Eleanor understands, Dad had said, not even looking at me. Don't you, sweetheart? This is how these things work. Marcel has the vision, the connections. He's been groomed for this. I'd opened my mouth to argue, to scream, to demand what was rightfully mine, but Marcel had smiled, that patronizing, pitying smile I'd grown to hate, and said, Don't worry, Ellie, I'll take care of you. Family looks out for family. Family? Right. The sound of my heels clicking against marble echoed through the empty hallway as I walked toward the front door. Each step felt like I was walking away from everything I'd ever known, everything I'd ever expected to be mine. Eleanor! Wait. Mom's voice stopped me at the door. I turned around. She stood at the top of the grand staircase, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Your father. He thinks he's doing what's best. For who? The words came out sharper than I intended. For Marcel, for the family name, or for himself? She descended the stairs slowly, her hand trailing along the banister. You could still be part of this. Marcel would find you a position working for my little brother? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Taking orders from someone who used to ask me to help him with his homework? Eleanor, please, don't leave like this. But I was already turning the handle. I'm not leaving, Mom. I'm being pushed out. There's a difference. The door closed behind me with a soft click, so different from the violent slam in Dad's study. I stood on the front steps of the house where I'd grown up, looking out at the circular driveway, the perfectly manicured gardens, the fountain that had been there since before I was born. All of it would be Marcel's now. I pulled out my phone and called a cab. While I waited, I scrolled through my contacts until I found Tessa's number. Elle, what's wrong? You sound. It's done, I said. Dad made it official. Marcel gets everything. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm coming to get you. No, I'm fine. I needed to tell someone. Where are you going? I looked back at the house one more time. Through the tall windows, I could see Marcel and Dad shaking hands in the study, celebrating probably. I don't know yet, I said, but I know where I'm not going. The cab pulled up and I slid into the back seat. As we drove away, I watched the house shrink in the rear window until it disappeared entirely. 8 years later, I'm sitting in my corner office on the 42nd floor of a Manhattan high rise, looking down at a city that once seemed impossible to conquer. The girl who got written out of her father's will is gone. In her place sits a woman who built her own empire, brick by bloody brick. My assistant knocked on the door. Ms. Eleanor, this came by courier. She handed me a cream colored envelope, heavy stock paper with my name written in elegant script. Inside was an invitation to the Meridian Financial Summit, an exclusive gathering of the most powerful investors on the East Coast. I'd heard whispers about Meridian for years. Invitation only, no applications accepted. The kind of place where billion-dollar deals got made over cocktails and handshakes. The kind of place my family's money could never have bought me access to. But my money? My reputation. That was a different story entirely. I smiled as I set the invitation on my desk. After 8 years of building, planning, and waiting, the real game was finally about to begin. And Marcel had no idea what was coming for him. The first year after leaving home was hell, pure, unfiltered hell. I burned through my modest allowance in 6 months, betting everything on a tech startup that promised to revolutionize social media. The founders seemed brilliant, passionate, hungry, just like me. The company folded in 3 months. You invested how much? Tessa stared at me across the tiny table in my studio apartment. She'd brought Chinese takeout because she knew I couldn't afford groceries. Everything, I said, stabbing at my lo mein. Every penny Dad gave me. Eleanor, what were you thinking? I was thinking I'd show them all. I was thinking I'd make my own fortune and shove it in their faces. I threw my chopsticks down. I was thinking like an idiot. Tessa reached across the table and grabbed my hand. It's not too late. You could call your father, apologize. No, I pulled my hand away. I'd rather live in a cardboard box than crawl back to them. Then what's your plan? I looked around my cramped apartment. The fold out couch, the hot plate that passed for a kitchen, the single window that faced a brick wall. I learn from my mistakes, and I try again. Tessa sighed. Elle, maybe you should consider something more stable. I could talk to my boss about. I'm not giving up. She left that night shaking her head, probably thinking I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. But I kept going. I took a job waiting tables at night and spent my days reading everything I could get my hands on about investing, market analysis, corporate finance. I haunted the business section of the library, taking notes until my hand cramped. 6 months later, I scraped together enough money to make another investment. Smaller this time, smarter. A little biotech company working on diabetes medication. I'd done my research, talked to doctors, studied their patents. It wasn't sexy like social media, but it was solid. The stock tripled in 8 months. Holy shit, Elle! Tessa practically screamed into the phone when I told her, "You actually did it." It's just the beginning, I said, but I was grinning so hard my face hurt. I reinvested the profits, diversified, played it safer but still aggressive. Slowly, methodically, my portfolio grew. I moved out of the studio into a 1 bedroom, then a 2 bedroom, then a place with actual windows that showed the sky. By year 3, I had enough money to quit waiting tables. By year 5, I was managing other people's money. By year 7, I had my own firm. And that's when I started paying attention to Marcel's business again. You want me to buy what? Owen looked at me like I'd suggested we purchase the moon. The Riverside property, I said, sliding the file across his desk. Marcel's company has been eyeing it for months. They're planning to bid next week. Owen flipped through the documents. Eleanor, this is a $12 million property, and it's not even a good investment. The zoning issues alone. I don't care if it's a good investment. I want Marcel to know someone beat him to it. Someone? You're not going to tell him it was you? I smiled. Not yet. Let him wonder. Owen shook his head but made the call. 3 days later, the property was mine. I was in my office when Marcel's assistant called. Miss Eleanor, I have Marcel on the line for you. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my voice steady. Put him through. Ellie? Jesus, I haven't heard from you in years. How are you? I'm well, Marcel. What can I do for you? Listen, I heard through the grapevine that you might know something about the Riverside deal. My team was really counting on that property, and now some mystery buyer swooped in at the last minute. That's unfortunate, I said, but I'm not sure how I can help. Come on, Ellie, you work in finance now, right? You must hear things. If you could just put in a good word, maybe find out who bought it. I leaned back in my chair, savoring the moment. I'm sorry, Marcel, I really can't help you with that. There was a long pause. Right. Well, if anything comes up, of course, take care of yourself. I hung up and immediately called Owen. How did it feel? He asked. Like the first taste of something I'm going to want a lot more of. Owen was quiet for a moment. Eleanor, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. What? There's a situation developing. A major real estate firm is in serious financial trouble. They've been hemorrhaging money for months and they're going to need a bailout soon. My pulse quickened. Which firm? Marcel's. I gripped the phone tighter. How serious? Bankruptcy serious. They're going to need someone to buy their debt, restructure everything. It's the kind of deal that could make or break both parties. I stared out my office window at the city sprawling below me. Somewhere out there, Marcel was probably in his own office, trying to figure out how to save his company, the company that should have been partially mine. Owen? Yeah? Set up a meeting, but keep my name out of it for now. Eleanor, are you sure about this? Once we go down this road, I've been sure about this for 8 years. I hung up and sat back in my chair, watching the sun set over Manhattan. The real game was finally beginning. And Marcel still had no idea who he was playing against. The financial reports made for fascinating reading. Marcel's company was hemorrhaging money faster than a punctured artery. 12 million in the red this quarter alone, Owen said, spreading the documents across my conference table. Their biggest project in Miami fell through, and they're stuck with massive loans they can't service. I picked up the debt analysis, scanning the numbers. Who holds most of their paper? Three different banks, plus some private investors. But here's the interesting part. Owen pulled out another file. One of those private investors is willing to sell for the right price. How much? 47 million. It would give you controlling interest in Marcel's debt. I set the papers down carefully. Do it. Eleanor, you need to understand what this means. If Marcel can't pay, you could force him into bankruptcy. You'd essentially own his company. I understand perfectly. Owen studied my face. And if he can pay, if he finds another way out, then I'll have made a solid investment. Either way, I win. 2 weeks later, I was the proud owner of Marcel's financial future. He just didn't know it yet. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. Lunch today? Haven't seen you in weeks. We met at our usual spot, a little bistro downtown. Tessa took one look at me and frowned. You look different, sharper, like you're planning something. I'm always planning something. This is different, Elle. You've got that look you used to get before you'd put salt in Marcel's coffee when we were kids. I laughed. I never did that. You absolutely did that, multiple times. Tessa leaned forward. What's going on? Nothing you need to worry about. That's exactly what you said before you invested your entire inheritance in that startup that crashed and burned. I stabbed my salad harder than necessary. This is different. How? Because this time I know what I'm doing. Tessa was quiet for a long moment. Elle, I love you, but revenge isn't going to fix what your father did to you. This isn't about revenge, this is about business. Right, and I'm sure it's just a coincidence that the business happens to belong to your brother. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Owen's name flashed on the screen. I have to take this, I said, stepping away from the table. Eleanor, we have a problem. Marcel's team just called an emergency board meeting. Word is getting out about their financial situation. How bad? Bad enough that Samara was spotted at 3 different charity events this week, probably trying to maintain appearances while everything falls apart behind the scenes. I walked back to Tessa, who was watching me with concern. I have to go, I said, grabbing my purse. Elle, wait. But I was already heading for the door. That afternoon, I sat in my office reviewing intelligence reports my team had gathered. Marcel's marriage was under strain. Samara had been seen arguing with him outside their country club. Their daughter Freya had been pulled from her expensive private school, though they were telling people it was for academic reasons. The walls were closing in, and Marcel was starting to panic. My assistant knocked. Ms. Eleanor, there's a Drake on the line. He says he represents Marcel's company, and it's urgent. I smiled. Put him through. Ms. Eleanor? This is Drake, head of legal for Marcel's firm. I understand you might be interested in discussing a potential investment opportunity. I might be. What kind of opportunity? We're looking for a strategic partner, someone who understands the real estate market and has the capital to help us through a temporary cash flow situation. Temporary? There was a pause. We're confident this is just a short term challenge. The fundamentals of our business are sound. I see. And what kind of partnership are you envisioning? We'd be open to various structures, perhaps a loan arrangement or even a limited equity position. I leaned back in my chair. Mr. Drake, I appreciate you reaching out, but I'm going to need to see detailed financials before I consider any investment. Of course, we can arrange that. And I'll want to meet with your principals directly. I don't do business through intermediaries. Another pause. That might be possible, though we'd prefer to keep any discussions confidential for now. Naturally. Have your people call my people. We'll set something up. After I hung up, I called Owen immediately. They took the bait, I said. How do you want to play this? Set up a meeting for next week, somewhere neutral. And Owen, make sure they don't know who they're meeting with until they're already in the room. Eleanor, are you sure about this? Once Marcel sees you, he'll realize that the little sister he dismissed isn't so little anymore. I hung up and walked to my window, looking out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk. Somewhere out there, Marcel was probably working late, trying to figure out how to save his company. He was about to find out that his salvation had a very familiar face, and she hadn't forgotten a single slight. The Meridian Hotel's private dining room was perfect for what I had planned: neutral territory, soundproof walls, and enough prestige to make Marcel think he was meeting with someone who mattered. He had no idea how right he was. "You're playing with fire," Tessa said over the phone as I adjusted my suit jacket in the mirror. "What if this backfires?" "It won't. You're about to walk into a room with your brother, who hasn't seen you in 8 years, and tell him you own his debt. Have you thought about what happens after that?" I had thought about it. I'd thought about little else for weeks. "I'll call you later," I said, hanging up. Owen was waiting in the lobby when I arrived. "They're already here: Marcel, Drake, and two other executives I don't recognize. Financial advisors, probably. Marcel never could handle numbers on his own. Eleanor, last chance to back out." I straightened my shoulders. "Let's go." The dining room was elegant but understated: mahogany table, crystal glasses, fresh flowers. Marcel sat at the far end, looking older than I remembered. His hair was thinner, his face more lined. Success hadn't been kind to him lately. Drake stood when we entered. "Ms. Eleanor, thank you for meeting with us. This is Marcel, our CEO, and—" Marcel's face went white. He half rose from his chair, then sat back down hard. "Hello, Marcel," I said, taking the seat directly across from him. "Ellie, what the hell are you doing here?" Drake looked confused. "You two know each other?" "We're family," I said, never taking my eyes off Marcel. "Isn't that right, brother?" The silence stretched until one of the financial advisors cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should postpone this meeting." "No," Marcel said, his voice tight. "We're here. Let's hear what she has to say." Owen placed a folder in front of me. I opened it slowly, letting the tension build. "Your company owes $47 million to various creditors," I began. "Your Miami project collapsed, leaving you with massive construction loans you can't service. Your quarterly losses are accelerating, and you have approximately 6 weeks before your biggest lender calls in their debt." Marcel's jaw clenched. "We're aware of our situation." "Are you aware that I now own that debt?" The room went dead silent. Drake's pen clattered to the table. "What?" Marcel's voice was barely a whisper. "I purchased your outstanding obligations 3 weeks ago, $47 million, which means, dear brother, that you now owe me everything." Marcel shot to his feet. "This is insane. You can't just—" "I can, and I did. It's all perfectly legal. Owen has the paperwork if you'd like to review it." Drake was frantically shuffling through documents. "This is highly irregular. We weren't informed of any debt transfer—" "Because you didn't need to be," Owen said calmly. "The transfer was between private parties. Your client's obligations remain the same, regardless of who holds the paper." Marcel was pacing now, his face flushed. "Ellie, what do you want?" "What I've always wanted. What should have been mine from the beginning. This is about Dad's will." "Jesus Christ, that was 8 years ago." "And you've had 8 years to prove you deserved what he gave you. How's that working out?" One of the financial advisors leaned forward. "Ms. Eleanor, perhaps we could discuss restructuring terms." "I'm not interested in restructuring." I closed the folder. "I'm interested in full repayment, $47 million plus interest. You have 30 days." Marcel stopped pacing. "30 days? That's impossible. You know we don't have that kind of cash." "Then I guess you'll have to get creative." "Ellie, please, we can work something out. Family helps family, right?" I stood up, smoothing my skirt. "You're absolutely right, Marcel. Family should help family. Too bad you forgot that lesson when it mattered." "Wait." Marcel grabbed my arm as I moved toward the door. "What do you really want? Money? Stock in the company? Name your price." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. "I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything you thought was yours by right." I pulled free and walked toward the door. Owen gathered his papers and followed. "Ellie!" Marcel called after me. "This isn't over." I paused at the door and turned back. "You're right, it's not over. But Marcel, next time we meet, you'll be the one begging." In the elevator, Owen was quiet until we reached the lobby. "That went better than expected," he said. "Did it?" Marcel looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Drake was taking notes like his life depended on it. "And those financial advisors? They know a sinking ship when they see one." We walked out into the afternoon sun. I felt lighter somehow, like I'd been carrying a weight for 8 years and finally set it down. "What's next?" Owen asked. "Now we wait. Marcel will try to find the money, fail, then come crawling back with a better offer. And if he doesn't?" I smiled. "Then I take everything." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk." Dad. I showed Owen the message. Looks like word travels fast in your family, he said. Good, I want them all to know what's coming. The boardroom at Marcel's company felt like a courtroom. I'd insisted on meeting there. His territory, his rules, his humiliation. Marcel sat at the head of the table, flanked by Drake and three other executives I didn't recognize. Samara had somehow inserted herself into the meeting, perched beside her husband like a guard dog in designer clothing. And at the far end, looking older and more frail than I remembered, sat my father. Eleanor, Dad said when I walked in. His voice carried the same authority it always had, but there was something brittle underneath. I think we need to discuss this situation like adults. Hello, Dad. I didn't realize you were still involved in Marcel's business decisions. I'm not involved. I'm here as a father, trying to prevent his daughter from destroying her own family. I took my seat across from Marcel, Owen beside me. I'm not destroying anything. I'm collecting on a debt. Samara leaned forward, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the table. This is ridiculous. You can't seriously expect us to come up with $47 million in 30 days. 26 days now, I corrected. And yes, I can expect exactly that. It's what Marcel agreed to when he signed those loan documents. Those loans were with other parties, Drake interjected. We had established relationships, payment schedules, which I'm under no obligation to honor. The debt transferred to me free and clear. Marcel had been quiet through this exchange, but now he spoke up. Ellie, what do you really want here? You want me to grovel? Fine. I'm sorry about what happened with Dad's will. I'm sorry you felt excluded. But this, he gestured around the room, this is insane. Is it? You got handed a multi-million-dollar company on a silver platter and you ran it into the ground. Maybe Dad should have given it to someone more competent. Dad's fist hit the table. Enough! Eleanor, I won't sit here and listen to you disrespect your brother. Disrespect? I laughed. Dad, Marcel owes me $47 million. This isn't about respect. This is about business. This is about revenge, Samara snapped. You're trying to punish Marcel for something that happened years ago. I'm trying to get paid. If Marcel can't handle his obligations, maybe he shouldn't have taken them on. Owen placed a new folder on the table. Actually, there might be a solution here. Everyone turned to look at him. Ms. Eleanor is willing to consider alternative arrangements. Instead of cash payment, she might accept equity in the company. Marcel's eyes narrowed. What kind of equity? I opened the folder and slid a document across the table. Controlling interest 51% of the company, plus board seats, plus operational control. The room erupted. Absolutely not, Dad said. You're out of your mind, Samara added. Drake was frantically scribbling notes. This would essentially be a hostile takeover. It would be a bailout, I corrected. Marcel keeps his job, keeps his salary, keeps his office. He just answers to me now. Marcel stared at the document like it might bite him. And if I refuse? Then I call in the debt. You declare bankruptcy. I buy your assets at auction for pennies on the dollar and end up with the same result, except you lose everything. There has to be another way, Dad said. Eleanor, I know you're angry. I'm not angry, Dad. I'm done. Done being dismissed, done being overlooked, done pretending that what you did to me was acceptable. What I did was protect the family business. You gave it to the wrong child. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcel's face had gone pale. Samara looked like she wanted to crawl under the table, and Dad was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. You have 24 hours to decide, I said, standing up. Sign the papers, or I start foreclosure proceedings. Wait, Marcel said. There's something else, isn't there? You said there was another condition. I paused at the door. There is, but we'll discuss that after you sign. Tell me now. I looked around the room at their faces, desperate, angry, afraid. Dad steps down from all advisory roles permanently. He has no say in company operations, no access to financial information, no involvement whatsoever. Dad shot to his feet. You can't do that. I can, and I will. Marcel can choose. Keep Dad's advice and lose everything, or cut the dead weight and save his company. Eleanor, he's your father. Mom's voice came from the doorway. I turned to see her standing there, looking fragile and tired. He's the man who decided I wasn't worth investing in. Now he gets to watch someone else make that call about him. I walked toward the door, then stopped. Oh, and Marcel, when you sign those papers, you might want to start thinking about how you're going to explain this to Freya. She's old enough to understand that Daddy's company belongs to Aunt Eleanor now. I left them sitting there in stunned silence. In the elevator, Owen was grinning. That was brutal. That was business. Same thing, apparently. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. Saw the news. Are you okay? I frowned. What news? Owen was already pulling up his phone. Shit, someone leaked it. The headline read, Family Feud, Heiress Takes Control of Brother's Real Estate Empire. I smiled. Perfect, now everyone will know exactly who's in charge. The elevator doors opened and we stepped into the lobby. Through the glass windows, I could see reporters gathering outside. Ready for this? Owen asked. I've been ready for 8 years. The signed contracts arrived at my office at 11:47 p.m. Marcel had waited until the last possible moment, probably hoping for a miracle that never came. I was reviewing the documents when my assistant buzzed in. Ms. Eleanor, Marcel is here. He says it's urgent. Send him in. Marcel looked like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie crooked, his eyes bloodshot. The papers are signed, he said, slumping into the chair across from my desk. You win. Now, what's this other condition you mentioned? I pulled out a fresh folder. Your personal assets, the house in the Hamptons, the apartment in Manhattan, the art collection, the cars. I want them as collateral. What? Eleanor, that's everything Samara and I own. Not everything. You still have your salary, your pension, your health insurance. You'll be fine. And Freya's trust fund? I slid another document across the desk. Redirected. The money will be held in escrow until she turns 25, then released directly to her. No parental control. Marcel's hands shook as he read the terms. You're destroying my family. I'm protecting Freya's future. God knows what you and Samara would do with that money if you got desperate enough. We would never touch Freya's money. Like you never thought you'd lose the company Dad handed you? Marcel was quiet for a long moment. Then, what about Samara's charity work? She's on the board of 3 different organizations. She'll need to step down. All of them. Eleanor, that's her whole life. Those charities depend on her. Then they'll have to find someone more reliable. Marcel stood up abruptly. This is insane. You're not just taking my business, you're taking everything that matters to us. Welcome to how I felt 8 years ago. That was different. How? You were young. You didn't understand business. I was 24 years old with a Harvard MBA. I understood business just fine. What I didn't understand was how my own father could look me in the eye and tell me I wasn't worth investing in. Marcel sat back down heavily. Dad thought he was protecting the family legacy. Dad thought women were decorations, pretty things to marry off and forget about. My phone rang. Owen's name flashed on the screen. Eleanor, we have a problem. There's a reporter from the Financial Times outside your building. Someone's been talking. What kind of talking? The kind that involves words like vindictive and family destruction. You need to see this. I hung up and turned on the news. A perfectly coiffed reporter stood outside Marcel's office building. Sources close to the family describe Eleanor as unhinged and obsessed with revenge. Her sister in law, Samara, had this to say. The camera cut to Samara standing outside what looked like their country club. Eleanor is destroying a family business out of spite. She's hurting innocent people, including her own 15-year-old niece. Turn it off, Marcel said quietly. But I kept watching. The reporter continued. Questions are also being raised about the elder Angus's role in the original family dispute. Sources suggest there may be more to this story than simple sibling rivalry. Now that was interesting. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Park, East Entrance. Come alone. Mom. I showed Marcel the message. Don't go, he said. Mom's been a wreck since this started. Dad's been pressuring her to talk to you, to make you stop. Maybe it's time we had that conversation. An hour later, I found Mom sitting on a bench overlooking the river. She looked smaller than ever, wrapped in a coat too big for her frame. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down beside her. What do you want, Mom? I want you to stop this before it goes too far. It's already gone too far. That happened 8 years ago. Mom was quiet for a moment, watching the water. Then, there are things you don't know about your father. Things that could hurt more than just our family. What kind of things? She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. Financial records from the early days of the company. Your father, he cut some corners, made some deals that weren't entirely legal. I opened the envelope. Inside were bank statements, wire transfer records, correspondence with offshore accounts. Mom, what is this? Insurance. I've been keeping these for years, just in case. If this family feud becomes public, if reporters start digging into the company's history. I scanned the documents. Tax evasion, bribery, money laundering. Enough to destroy Dad's reputation and possibly send him to prison. Why are you showing me this? Because I'm asking you to choose. You can destroy Marcel and Samara, take their house, their dignity, their future, or you can stop now and these documents stay buried. I looked at my mother, really looked at her. She was terrified, but there was steel underneath. She'd been protecting Dad's secrets for decades. What about Freya? I asked. What about her? If I stop now, what happens to her? She grows up watching her parents struggle, learning that women don't matter, that family loyalty only flows one direction. Mom's hands twisted in her lap. She'll grow up with parents who love her. She'll grow up with parents who failed her. I stood up, still holding the envelope. I'll think about it. Eleanor, please. I said I'll think about it. But as I walked away, I was already making plans. Mom had just given me the final piece of the puzzle, and I intended to use it. The press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m. I'd called it myself, sent invitations to every major financial publication, every business reporter who'd been sniffing around the story. Owen paced my office like a caged animal. Eleanor, once you do this, there's no going back. Your father will be ruined, possibly prosecuted. Good. And your family will never forgive you. They never forgave me anyway. My phone had been ringing all morning. Marcel, Samara, even Tessa trying to talk me out of it. I'd ignored them all. At 1:30, my assistant buzzed in. Ms. Eleanor, your family is here. All of them. Send them in. They filed into my office like mourners at a funeral. Dad looked older than I'd ever seen him. Mom was clutching his arm. Marcel's face was stone, and Samara looked like she wanted to murder me with her bare hands. Eleanor, Dad said, his voice hoarse, I'm begging you. Don't do this. Do what, Dad? Tell the truth? Destroy your own family for revenge. I held up the manila envelope Mom had given me. You destroyed this family the day you decided I wasn't worth your respect. This is just the cleanup. Marcel stepped forward. Ellie, think about Freya. She doesn't deserve to have her grandfather's name dragged through the mud. Where is Freya, by the way? Shouldn't she be here for this family meeting? She's at school, Samara snapped, where children belong, not in the middle of adult business. Adult business, right? Like when Dad decided my future without consulting me? Mom spoke up, her voice barely a whisper. I gave you those documents to protect the family, not destroy it. You gave me those documents because you knew Dad's sins would catch up with him eventually. You just wanted to control when and how. Dad moved closer to my desk. Eleanor, I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes, but this won't fix anything. It'll just create more pain. For who? For you? For Marcel? What about the pain you caused me? You seem to be doing just fine, Samara said coldly. Look at this office, your success. You didn't need our help after all. I laughed. You're right, I didn't need your help, but I shouldn't have had to prove myself worthy of basic family respect. The clock on my wall showed 1:45, 15 minutes until show time. Last chance, I said. Dad steps down from everything. No more advisory roles, no more industry connections, no more pretending he's still relevant. He retires quietly, and these documents stay buried. And Marcel? Dad asked. Marcel keeps the company, keeps his house, keeps his dignity. But he answers to me. Dad looked at Marcel, then back at me. And if I refuse? Then in 10 minutes, every reporter in the city learns about your offshore accounts, your tax evasion, your bribery schemes. The FBI will probably be very interested. The room was silent except for the ticking clock. Dad, Marcel said quietly, just do it, please. I built this company from nothing, Dad said. I gave you everything. You gave Marcel everything, I corrected. You gave me nothing and expected gratitude. Fine. Dad's voice was defeated. I'll step down. But Eleanor, when this is over, when you've gotten your revenge, remember that you chose to tear this family apart. I didn't tear it apart, Dad. I just stopped pretending it was whole. At exactly 2 p.m., I walked into the conference room where 2 dozen reporters waited. Camera flashes went off as I took my place at the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. I'm here to address the recent speculation about my family's business dealings. I looked out at the crowd of reporters, their pens poised, cameras rolling. There have been questions about my motivations in acquiring my brother's debt. Some have suggested this is about revenge or family drama. I want to set the record straight. I paused, letting the tension build. This is about business, pure and simple. My brother's company was failing, and I saw an opportunity to invest. The fact that we're related is irrelevant. A reporter raised her hand. But what about the allegations of family conflict? Your sister in law suggested? My sister in law is understandably upset about losing control of assets she never actually owned. That's not my concern. Another reporter. Will you be making changes to the company's leadership? Marcel will remain as CEO, reporting to a new board structure. We're also pleased to announce that Angus, the company's founder, will be stepping down from all advisory roles to enjoy a well deserved retirement. I could see Owen in the back of the room giving me a thumbs up. Are there any other questions about the business aspects of this transaction? A young reporter in the front row raised his hand. Ms. Eleanor, do you have any comment on the rumors about your father's financial practices in the early days of the company? I smiled. I'm not aware of any such rumors. My father built a successful business through hard work and dedication. His legacy speaks for itself. The press conference ended 20 minutes later. I'd given them just enough to satisfy their curiosity without revealing the nuclear option I still held. As the reporters filed out, I saw my family waiting in the hallway. Dad looked relieved, Marcel confused, Mom grateful. But I wasn't done yet. The real reckoning was just beginning. The knock on my office door came at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the press conference. I looked up to see Freya standing in my doorway, still in her school uniform, backpack slung over her shoulder. Aunt Eleanor, can we talk? I gestured to the chair across from my desk. How did you get up here? I told security I was your niece. They called up, and your assistant said to send me up. Freya sat down, looking smaller than her 15 years. I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For what? For my trust fund. Mom and Dad told me what you did, that the money goes directly to me when I turn 25. I studied her face. She had Marcel's eyes, but Mom's stubborn chin. Your parents aren't happy about that decision. No, they're not. But I am. Freya leaned forward. Aunt Eleanor, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did Grandpa give everything to Dad and nothing to you? The question hung in the air between us. I'd been asked variations of it by reporters, lawyers, even Tessa, but hearing it from Freya felt different. Because he thought women weren't capable of running businesses. He thought we were meant to be wives and mothers, not leaders. That's stupid, I smiled. Yes, it is. Mom says you're destroying the family. What do you think? Freya was quiet for a moment. I think you're showing everyone that Grandpa was wrong about women, and I think that's important. My phone buzzed with a text from Owen. Board meeting in conference room A. Marcel's here. I looked at Freya. I have to go to a meeting. Want to see how a real business works? Her eyes lit up. Really? Come on. We walked down the hall to the conference room where Marcel sat with Drake and 2 other executives. They all looked up when we entered. Freya? Marcel stood up. What are you doing here? I came to see Aunt Eleanor. She's showing me around. Marcel's jaw tightened. Eleanor, we need to discuss the quarterly projections. In front of Freya, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. She's old enough to understand how businesses work. This isn't appropriate. Marcel, sit down. Let's get started. For the next hour, I walked through the company's financials, asked pointed questions about cost overruns, and made decisions about upcoming projects. Freya sat quietly, taking it all in. When the meeting ended, Marcel lingered as the others filed out. Eleanor, I need to ask you something. What? Are you ever going to forgive me? I looked at him, really looked at him. The golden boy who'd gotten everything handed to him, who'd nearly lost it all through incompetence and arrogance. Marcel, forgiveness isn't the point. The point is that you understand what you did wrong. I was 26 when Dad made that decision. I didn't ask for it. But you accepted it? You never once questioned whether it was fair. Marcel was quiet for a moment. You're right. I should have spoken up. Yes, you should have. So, what happens now? Do I spend the rest of my life working for my little sister? You spend the rest of your life proving you deserve the chance Dad gave you. And maybe, if you do a good job, I'll consider making you a partner instead of an employee. Marcel's eyes widened. You'd do that? If you earn it? After Marcel left, Freya and I walked back to my office. Aunt Eleanor, can I ask you something else? Of course. Do you think I could work here someday, after college? I sat down behind my desk and looked at this remarkable young woman who'd somehow emerged from the wreckage of my family's dysfunction. Freya, you can work anywhere you want. You can start your own company, run for president, change the world. The trust fund will give you that freedom. But I want to work here, with you. Why? Because you're the only adult in our family who treats me like I have a brain. I felt something shift inside my chest, a warmth I hadn't expected. Then, yes, but you'll start at the bottom, just like everyone else. No special treatment because you're family. I wouldn't want it any other way. My phone rang. Tessa's name flashed on the screen. Elle, I just saw the news about your company's quarterly earnings. You're killing it. We're doing well. And how are you doing? Really? I looked at Freya, who was examining the framed diplomas on my wall with interest. I'm good, Tess. Really good. No regrets? I thought about Dad, forced into retirement and irrelevance. About Marcel, working harder than he ever had in his life. About Samara, stripped of her social status. About Mom, finally free from keeping Dad's secrets. No regrets. After Freya left, I stood at my office window watching the city lights come alive. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on the quarterly results. You've proven your point. Dad. I deleted the message without responding. Some victories don't require acknowledgement, they just require living well. And I was finally truly living.